It's kind of funny, but to me it feels like almost every big New York Rangers kind of link that we see in the media between the Rangers and any other player on any other team is sparked up by Larry Brooks in the New York Post. This is another article he posted last week talking about Alexander Georgiev and how he might be the lone casualty in Igor Shesterkin's Rangers ascent. This article pretty much goes over how Georgiev might be traded, and that's not really new news because he has been a name that has been included on several NHL Insiders trade watch lists, so if Georgiev were to be traded, I personally wouldn't be all too surprised. But what Larry Brooks goes out there and really highlights that I wanted to talk about in this video was the idea of what should replace Georgiev. Now, if you want to go out there and say he needs to be traded, that's fine and dandy, but when you have yourselves a backup goaltender position that is freed up, who's going to be the guy to step in and be the backup to Igor Shesterkin? Take a look at what the article says here towards the end of the entire piece. Any one of Georgiev's upcoming starts might be his last as a Ranger, given that the club will not be able to qualify him this summer when his contract expires. He will be on track to becoming a free agent. The upcoming March 21 trade deadline represents the Rangers' last opportunity to get something in return for the NHL's first Bulgarian-born player. Great stat, by the way. The Blue Shirts would have to obtain a backup to replace him, with either Thomas Greiss, who played so well for the Wings in their 3-2 shootout victory at the Garden on Thursday, or Jaro Halak, currently on IR for the Canucks as potential targets. But the Rangers' relationship with Georgiev, who has felt suppressed in his role, is probably coming to an end as the lone casualty off the handoff from Lundqvist to Shesterkin. Now again, this was from a week ago, so Halak, IR, Greiss, 3-2 shootout victory, it's kind of old news. But this is an interesting enough video idea that I wanted to go out there and discuss what exactly a Halak or a Greiss trade could look like if you're talking about the New York Rangers. Now, if you go over both of these guys, one of the bigger things you're going to find that links the two of them together, aside from this Rangers article, is the fact that they were both New York Islanders at some point in their careers. Jaroslav Halak was on the Islanders from 2014 up until 2018. Greiss was on this team from, when the heck was that, 2015 up until 2020. So, even for a good amount of time, they were on the Islanders together as the 1A, 1B situation there. Now, I know a lot of Rangers fans are going to go out there and immediately say, oh, former Islanders, wow, that's a meme, but either way, these two guys are particularly noted in the article, therefore I felt like it was appropriate to bring it up. Jaroslav Halak for the Vancouver Canucks. By the way, if you want more Canucks content, we're going to be talking about them a ton over the next few days because, hey, why the heck should we not? Halak this season has been bad statistically, an .899 save percentage and a .293 goals against average. And, I'm going to go out there and say this. Halak is probably better than these numbers indicate. Like, some of the performances we have seen out of Halak, especially during the Travis Green part of the season, were pretty good. Like, I know the individual save percentages are terrible, and if you isolate these, it doesn't look all too much better, but if you watch a lot of these games, Halak just really did not get any support from his defenders, and I know I'm going to go out there and get some people in the comments that say, oh, Lego, come on, why are you trying to defend this guy? He's just been bad. Why can't you admit that? Yeah, he has been bad. An .899 save percentage is bad, but he's a lot better than these numbers would indicate. Sure, he has the odd game or two that is really his fault, like the game against the New York Islanders where he let up like 7 goals or whatever it was. Was it 7? I think he was like 5 or 6 or something like that. But he was really bad in that game. That was probably one of the worst games we had had this entire season. And you could probably hear my smile right now as I'm saying that. But right now, Jaroslav Halak is indeed an option. But the problem is he's got a no-move clause. He's got a $1.5 million AAV contract, which would be pretty attainable for any other team that wants to get a backup goalie. But he holds the cards as to where and when he's going to get traded, if he even gets traded at all. It's the first time he's ever had a no-move clause, so it wouldn't surprise me if the 36-year-old went out there and was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to use it. This was Rick Dhaliwal and what he was saying on the entire Rick and Dolly show, or excuse me, my goodness, Donnie and Dolly show, that Jaroslav Halak really does not want to move, and the Canucks are trying to convince him. They want to go out there and tell him, okay, please waive, like, we need to get this money off the books, we need to get some draft picks or whatever. They want Spencer Martin to be in that backup position because he's been fantastic, but Halak ultimately has the final decision over here, so Whether or not it's New York, whether or not it's any other team, who really knows? I think if Jaroslav Halak was asked, hey, you want to go to New York? Like, you want to play for the Rangers? You want to be a backup to Shesterkin on one of the best teams in the league, point production-wise? I'd have a difficult time, personally, saying no to that, but of course, people have their reasons. People get no-move clauses with the intention of using them, so for Jaro Halak, we'll see where, indeed, that conversation goes. As for Thomas Greiss, his contract is also expiring this season. He's making a lot more, though. He's making twice the amount, $3.6 million as an AAV. He is also 36 years old, and he is also from Europe. He's from Germany this time. 6'2", 218, so a lot taller than Jaroslav Halak. Greiss this season has had a number that is a little bit, just slightly better than Halak at a .900 save percentage and a much worse goals against with a .323 goals against. Now, both these guys have bad numbers this season, but you'll find the odd game or two when Thomas Greiss really steps up and shows that he is a lot better than these numbers would indicate. Even Nedeljkovic has a .907 save percentage and a .301 goals against, so that goals against number is really not great for all these Red Wings goaltenders, but the Red Wings, for all intents and purposes, are still doing pretty well this year, considering where they were supposed to be. For Greiss, though, he has indeed been linked to a few other trade conversations by NHL insiders. Pretty much like the entire year, it's always been a floating idea in the back of a lot of Red Wings fans' minds, because he's been here on a short-term deal the entire time. The Red Wings are trying to go out there and get younger while also having the veteran and older presence in the lineup to really help those younger guys come along better. And with Greiss, we saw it last season. He was fantastic. A .912 save percentage and a .270 goals against on the Red Wings of all teams. He was doing pretty well, which is why a lot of Red Wings fans are like, okay, if we keep Greiss, we get Nedeljkovic, then that would be pretty fine. Like, I would not have any problems with that. It's just now there is an extended conversation as to a trade-like scenario, especially since Greiss does not have any trade protection. There is a lot more flexibility there than there would be with Halak. Now, for New York, Halak is a lot more of a better get, I would think, because he is like half the dollar amount. Although, if you take a look at the numbers, I mean, his numbers are slightly worse save percentage-wise than Greiss, although it's not by much. When it comes to what a trade return could look like, though, that's where things could sort of open up. Are these goaltenders, backup guys who have bad save percentages on pretty mediocre to bad teams, worth all too much? Is it like a second? Is it a third and a second? Is it a prospect, B-tier prospect, maybe a roster player? Who really knows? You can let me know in the comments what you would think a Jaroslav Halak or a Thomas Greiss would look like on the trade market, especially if the New York Rangers go out there and actually have that need. It's one thing to just go out there and trade for Halak, but it's another thing to go out there and trade for Halak should you really legitimately need a backup goaltender. All of a sudden, there's a lot of negotiating power for Patrick Alvin, for Steve Yzerman, for whoever it is you're conversing with. They can say, okay, you need this. You need this backup goalie. You don't have Georgiev anymore, and therefore I can say, hey, you really need this, so I'm going to up the price. How about a second and a B-tier prospect or something? Because aside from that conversation, at face value, these guys should not really be worth all too much in the market. It's just this Georgiev thing is making them worth a little bit more in the eyes of some people who are trying to go out there and look at this situation in a needs, surplus, wants, kind of very economical angle. So, New York Rangers fans, let me know in the comments, what do you think about Thomas Greiss and or Jaroslav Halak? Would you want to go out there and make a trade with the Vancouver Canucks or the Red Wings for either of these guys? Cap-wise, it should work out because they both expire this season. However, Greiss is making twice the amount Halak is. Halak would be a lot more difficult to trade for because he's got no move protection, so you'd have to go out there and make a pitch to him directly and actually convince him to say, okay, sure, let's do it. What would you give up for either of these guys? Let me know in the comments what your prospect pool and draft pick stock looks like in terms of what you would, be willing to shell out. There are some prospects that I do like in the New York system. A lot of them are indeed top-tier guys, so like Brennan Othman, of course. You have Longfist, you have Braden Schneider. There are some of the guys at the top of the food chain there. But there are some pretty good prospects throughout the Rangers system that I do think are a lot more underrated than most people would give them credit for. I'm thinking about Ryder Korczak, Brett Berard. You have Levi Altonen as well. There are some pretty good names, underrated names in this prospect core, so you can let me know in the comments all your thoughts about that. Also, if you're a Canucks or a Red Wings fan, what would you want from New York in a trade for either of these backup goaltenders? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.